The night was heavy, and the air carried the smell of burning oil and wet stone. Torches flickered along the edges of the village square, their orange light painting long shadows across the ground. At the very center stood the sacrificial pillar, a tall block of black stone, older than the memory of the people. The pillar was cracked and scarred, but it had never fallen. Some said it was carved by gods, others whispered it had grown from the earth itself. Now another life was bound to. Its chains rattled as the young woman shifted against the cold surface. Her wrists bled where the iron cuffs bit into her skin. Dust and ash clung to her face, but her eyes still burned with a strange light, half fear, half defiance. Around her, the villagers gathered in silence. Old men, mothers clutching children, and warriors holding spears all stared at her as if she carried a poison inside her body. To them, she was not a daughter or a sister. She was the condemned one. The high priest lifted his staff and the crowd knelt at once. His voice echoed deep and harsh. She is cursed. Her blood carries the anger of the gods. Only sacrifice can keep the beast asleep. Tonight, her fate is sealed. A low murmur spread through the people. They had heard the story since birth. Every 100 years, a chosen one was bound to the pillar. Their life was the price to keep the ancient monster buried in the dark beneath the earth. And though no one alive had ever seen this creature, they believed with every breath that if the sacrifice failed, doom would rise from the ground. Ew. Girl pressed her cheek against the stone, whispering to herself. No one heard the words, but her lips formed a prayer. Not to the gods who condemned her, but to the endless night sky above. She prayed not for mercy, but for a chance to live, even if fate itself was against her. The drums began. Slow, deep and steady. Boom, boom, boom. Each strike felt like a heartbeat, pulling her closer to the end. The warriors threw stones at her feet, marking her as guilty. Dust burst around her ankles. Children watched with wide eyes, too young to understand why the crowd looked both afraid and eager. The priest raised his voice again. Chains hold her, stones curse her, the pillar accepts her. The beast shall sleep another 100 years. The girl closed her eyes, and for a moment she saw her life flash behind them. Running through the fields as a child, laughing with her mother, the gentle face of her brother before the soldiers took her away. She had thought her story would be long, filled with moments of love, of anger, of dreams. But now it seemed it would end here, with her blood on the stone. Yet inside her chest, her heart still fought. I will not accept this. The drums grew louder. Warriors stepped forward with heavy blades, their shadows stretching across the pillar. The crowd leaned in, hungry and fearful at once. The girl lifted her head and met their eyes. She did not beg. She did not cry. She only glared, as if daring the world to kill her. And then, the ground shook. It was small at first, like the tremor of a distant storm. Dust rained down from the cracks of the pillar. The torches flickered as the earth groaned beneath their feet. The villagers gasped, some falling to their knees in terror. Had the beast already stirred? Was the sacrifice too late? The priest froze mid-chant. His lips moved, but no words came out. The girl felt it too, the vibration running through the stone into her bones. But she also saw something the others did not. She lifted her eyes to the sky, and above the clouds she saw a streak of light tearing across the heavens. It was no star, no falling ember. It was something else. Something foreign. Something new. Diu. Villagers pointed upward, voices rising in panic. The gods are angry. No, it is fire from the sky. The streak grew brighter, rushing toward the earth like a burning spear. The girl's chains rattled as she pulled against them, her chest rising with sudden hope. Maybe it was not the gods. Maybe it was not fate. Maybe it was an answer. The torches shook in the sudden wind. The drums stopped. Every eye turned upward as the streak screamed through the night sky. The roar grew until it drowned out every sound in the village. The girl's heart hammered, and then, impact. The streak slammed into the forest beyond the village. The ground quaked, trees split, and a column of smoke rose high into the air. The crowd screamed, some fleeing toward their homes, others dropping flat to the earth. The priest shouted for calm, but even his voice cracked with fear. The girl leaned against her chains, eyes wide. She did not know what had fallen, but in her heart she felt the shift of destiny. For the first time that night she smiled. A small, broken smile, but a smile of hope. Something had come from the sky, something powerful enough to shake the world, and perhaps, just perhaps, something powerful enough to break her chains. The forest burned with smoke and glowing embers. Birds shrieked as they fled into the night sky, and animals scattered in panic. The villagers still knelt in fear around the sacrificial pillar, whispering prayers, their eyes wide with terror. Some believed the gods had thrown fire to punish them. Others thought the beast beneath the earth had already risen. But the girl chained to the pillar saw more than fear. She saw change. Far away, beyond the black trees, something had crashed. The light that streaked across the sky had not vanished. It had landed. The ground still trembled faintly as if the forest itself was holding its breath. And then the sound came. Not thunder. Not storm. A low grinding noise, metal against stone, unlike anything the villagers had ever heard. The girl's heart raced. She pulled against her chains until her skin tore. Her eyes searched the shadows. Somewhere out there, beyond the smoke, someone had arrived. The stranger appears. From the forest's edge, a figure emerged. Tall, broad-shouldered, his form covered in strange armor that shimmered in the torchlight. His steps were heavy, each one carrying the weight of worlds unknown to this village. His face was partly hidden under a cracked helmet, but his eyes glowed with determination. The villagers gasped. Some cried, "A demon!" Others whispered, "A god walks among us." The human soldier, though they did not yet know what he was, paused, scanning the crowd. He looked not at the priest nor at the warriors, but at the chained girl, his gaze fixed on her, sharp and unshaken, as if fate had pointed him directly toward her. The girl's breath caught. She had prayed to the sky, and now from the sky had come this stranger. The priest raised his staff, shouting, "Do not go near her! She is cursed. To touch her is to share her doom." But the soldier did not stop. He walked forward, each step echoing louder than the drums had. His boots crushed the stones at his feet. His hand rested on the strange weapon at his side, a weapon no villager had ever seen. The warriors moved to block his path. Spears crossed before him. One barked in anger, "Turn back, Skyman. She is condemned. Her blood belongs to the pillar." The soldier tilted his head. He did not understand their words, but he understood their hostility. He raised his hand slowly, palm open, showing he meant no harm, yet his eyes never left the girl. The tension grows. The girl's lips trembled. She wanted to call out, but her voice was weak from thirst and pain. Still she forced the words past her cracked lips. "Help. Me." It was barely a whisper, yet the soldier heard. His head turned sharply toward her. Their eyes locked, and, in that instant, something powerful passed between them. She saw not pity in his eyes, but resolve. The villagers hissed in horror. The priest roared, "She calls to him! The cursed one tempts him!" The soldier clenched his fists. He did not know their language, but he knew injustice when he saw it. The girl was chained, broken, and surrounded by hate. And though he was one man against an entire village, he felt something inside him burn. He stepped forward again. First clash. The warriors lunged. Spears thrust toward him. In a flash, the soldier drew his weapon, a device that spat fire and light. A single shot burst into the night, striking the ground. The explosion sent the warriors tumbling back, spears flying from their hands. The villagers screamed, some running, others bowing low in fear. Oh, to them it was magic beyond gods. To him it was survival. The soldier's voice rang out, harsh but clear. "No chains. Not tonight." The girl's eyes widened. She did not know his tongue, but she understood his intent. He would not leave her there, breaking the circle. The priest, pale with rage, slammed his staff to the ground. "You defy fate, you defy the gods." But the soldier ignored him. He walked straight to the pillar. His fingers brushed the cold iron chains. The girl flinched, unsure if this stranger was salvation or another torment. But his touch was careful, almost gentle, as if he respected her pain. He pulled at the chains. They held firm, forged to last 100 years. He drew a tool from his belt, a sharp edge of steel unlike anything in the village. With a grunt he struck. Sparks flew. Metal screamed. The villagers watched in horror. "He breaks the sacred chains." "Stop him, stop the Sky Man." Warriors tried to rise again, but fear held them frozen. The soldier swung again, and again, until at last, with a final strike, the chains shattered. The sound rang louder than the drums, louder than the chants. The girl collapsed forward, free for the first time in months. Her breath came fast, her chest heaving, but her eyes shone with wild, desperate hope. The unseen danger. But freedom was not victory. The ground rumbled again, stronger this time. Cracks split across the stone beneath the pillar. From deep below, a roar echoed so ancient and terrible that even the bravest warriors fell to their knees. The girl's face turned pale. Her voice shook as she whispered to the soldier, "You should not have freed me. Now it wakes." The soldier turned his head, scanning the trembling earth. His weapon tightened in his grip. He had broken chains, but in doing so he had broken something else, something hidden beneath the ground. The villagers screamed in one voice. The beast rises." The soldier pulled the girl to her feet. She stumbled, weak, but he held her steady. His jaw set like stone. Whatever rose from beneath, he would face it. He had chosen this path. The priest cried in despair, his staff shaking in his hand. "Fate is broken. Doom is upon us." The girl clung to the soldier's arm, her chains fallen at her feet. She whispered again, this time not to the sky, but to him, "You defied fate." And in the darkness below, the beast stirred. The night was no longer quiet. The forest still smoked where the fireball had struck, and the earth beneath the sacrificial pillar groaned like a beast in pain. The girl stumbled forward, her chains broken, her wrists raw. She looked at the stranger, the man of iron and fire, still, standing firm, weapon in hand, facing the terrified crowd. To her, he was not a god and not a demon. He was something else entirely. A man who had chosen to stand against fate itself. But fate was not so easily broken. The rumble below. The villagers backed away from the pillar, fear shaking their voices. Mothers dragged children into the shadows. Warriors dropped their spears, unwilling to fight both the sky stranger and the curse that stirred beneath their feet. The high priest clutched his staff, his voice sharp and desperate. "You fool! The sacrifice held the beast in its sleep. Now the chains are broken and doom will rise." The girl's heart pounded as she felt the vibration through the soles of her feet. It was steady like a heartbeat, but not human. The ground split further, glowing cracks of red fire spreading outward like veins. The stranger turned, pulling her behind him. His eyes narrowed at the splitting earth. He had seen destruction before, but nothing like this. The air carried not only heat but something darker, an ancient hunger rising from below. The first glimpse from the depths came a roar, deep and endless, a sound that shook the soul. The villagers screamed, falling flat to the ground in hopeless prayer. Some tried to flee, but the ground opened wide, swallowing those who ran too slow. A massive claw broke the surface, jagged and stone-like, dripping with molten fire. Then, another. The sacrificial pillar cracked down the middle as if it had always been a lid on the monster below. The girl trembled. Her voice was a whisper, yet heavy with terror. "It wakes. The beast wakes." The stranger's grip tightened on his weapon. His voice was low, steady, filled with resolve. "Then we fight. Defiance at the pillar." The priest screamed at him, "You cannot fight it. No blade, no fire can slay what was born from the god's wrath. It will devour us all." But the stranger did not listen. He had not come from the sky to kneel in fear. He had not broken chains to watch her be taken again. The beast pushed higher, its head rising above the shattered pillar. Its eyes burned like molten suns, and its body was a mountain of stone and fire. Every breath shook the world. Every movement rained ash from the sky. The villagers wailed, but the girl only stared in silence. She had always believed her death would feed this creature, keep it trapped. But now she realized her life was not the key. Her life was the excuse. The pillar had been a prison, but the sacrifice had been a lie, and the stranger had shattered that lie with his defiance. The human stands, the beast turned its blazing eyes toward the freed girl. It knew her. It hungered for her. Its roar sent shockwaves that flattened trees and shattered stone walls. The stranger stepped forward, placing himself between her and the monster. His armor glowed faintly under the heat, his weapon humming with strange energy. The girl clutched his arm. "You cannot stop it, you will die." His answer was calm, firm. Better to die free than live chained. Her breath caught. No one had ever spoken such words in her world. No one had ever dared. Clash. With the monster, the beast lunged. Its claw swept across the square, smashing huts and sending fire into the night. The stranger pulled the girl clear, rolling across the ground. Dust choked the air. He aimed his weapon, firing bursts of light into the creature's hide. Sparks exploded. Smoke filled the air, but the monster only roared louder. Its stone skin cracked but did not break. The villagers wailed, convinced the end had come. But the stranger did not retreat. He fired again, circling the beast, drawing its rage away from the girl. Every move was desperate yet fearless, a dance of survival against something that should not be faced. The girl's awakening. The girl watched, her chest rising and falling with panic. She had been raised to believe she was cursed, useless, except as an offering. But now, watching this stranger fight for her life, something sparked inside her. She grabbed a fallen spear, its shaft rough in her hands. She was weak, her arms trembling, but her spirit burned brighter than ever before. "No more chains," she whispered, and she ran to join him. The first strike. Together. The stranger glanced at her in shock as she drove the spear into one of the beast's cracks. It did little, but the creature shrieked, shifting its massive weight. That small strike gave the soldier the opening he needed. He unleashed a focused blast from his weapon directly into the glowing wound. The explosion lit the night like a second sun. The beast staggered, slamming into the ground, shaking the entire square. The villagers stared in disbelief. For the first time, they saw the beast bleed. Suspenseful ending, but victory was not yet theirs. The creature's roar was louder than before, shaking mountains and forests alike. Its wounds glowed brighter, its fury rising. The stranger pulled the girl close, shielding her from falling debris. He looked into her eyes, his voice steady, despite the chaos. "This is only the beginning." The beast rose again, taller, stronger, its burning eyes fixed on them both. The chains of fate were broken, and now destiny itself had been unleashed. And the night of the sacrificial pillar had only just begun. The sacrificial pillar was gone. What had once been a symbol of fear now lay in ruins, split by the claws of the monster it had hidden for centuries. Smoke rose from the cracks in the ground. Flames spread through the village as huts burned like dry leaves. Screams filled the night, and above it all the beast roared, a sound so powerful it seemed to tear the stars apart. The girl clung to the stranger's arm, her eyes wide with horror. The people who had once condemned her now fled past her, not even daring to look back. The world they had trusted was broken. Their sacrifice had failed. Their curse had risen, and the beast was hungry. The creature rises. The monster pulled itself free from the earth. Its body was vast, taller than the tallest trees, made of molten stone and glowing cracks of fire. Each step shook the ground, collapsing walls and scattering debris. Its breath poured smoke like a burning mountain. It lifted its head toward the sky, bellowing so loud that birds fell dead from the air. Then it turned its blazing eyes back to the village, to the girl who had been chained and the stranger who had set her free. The priest fell to his knees, his staff trembling. His voice cracked as he wailed, "The gods have abandoned us. The beast will eat the world." The stranger did not bow. He grabbed the girl's wrist, pulling her away from the crumbling pillar. His voice was firm, steady, even in the chaos. Move. Now. Flight through fire they ran. The girl's bare feet pounded the dirt, cutting on stones and splinters, but she did not slow. The stranger's grip held her upright, dragging her when her legs threatened to give out. Behind them, the beast's claw tore through the village, smashing huts into dust. Screams rose, then vanished under collapsing roofs. Fire spread across the thatch, filling the air with choking smoke. The stranger covered the girl with his armored arm, forcing a path through the burning ruins. The girl coughed, her voice ragged. "You cannot kill it. It cannot die." The stranger's eyes narrowed. His reply was sharp, defiant. "Everything can die. The hunt begins." The beast's head swung toward them. It sniffed the air, then roared again, shaking trees to their roots. It had tasted her, sent for years, bound above its prison. Now it wanted her flesh. With a single step, it crushed half the square. With another, it tore through the forest edge, chasing them into the wild. The girl looked over her shoulder. Her heart froze. The monster was faster than it should have been. Its legs, though massive, moved with terrifying speed. Each step devoured the distance. The stranger pushed her harder. "Run! Don't stop!" They stumbled into the dark woods, branches whipping their faces, roots clawing their feet. The fire from the village glowed behind them, but the beast's shadow stretched even farther, blacking out the stars. The curse explained as they ran, the girl's words spilled in broken gasps. "They chained me because I was chosen. Every 100 years and a sacrifice and to keep it below." The stranger glanced at her, his breath heavy but unshaken. "They lied to you. Sacrifice was not to protect the people. It was to feed it." To keep it waiting. Her eyes widened, horror twisting her features. She stumbled but caught herself. "All my life, I thought I was cursed. I thought I was death." The stranger's voice cut like iron. "You're not cursed. You're alive. That's all that matters." His words struck deeper than any weapon. For the first time, she believed them. The beast strikes. The forest exploded as the beast crashed through the trees. Trunks snapped like twigs. The ground split under its claws. A burning boulder flew past, thrown by its massive hand, and smashed into the earth just ahead of them. The girl screamed as fire burst around them. The stranger threw himself over her, shielding her with his body. Heat scorched his armor, but he pushed onward, dragging her past the flames. The beast roared again, so close that the sound ripped through their bones. Cornered at the river at last, they burst into a clearing. A wide river stretched before them, its waters wild and fast. Behind them, the forest trembled as the beast drew near. The girl's chest heaved. There is nowhere left to run. The stranger scanned the river. His eyes flicked to the jagged rocks, the roaring current. A dangerous escape, but the only chance. He pulled her close. "Do you trust me?" Her lips trembled. She barely knew him. Yet he had broken her chains, defied her death, and stood against the monster of gods. She nodded. "Yes." Without another word, he dragged her into the water. The leap of faith, the current seized them instantly, pulling them downstream. Water crashed over their heads, spinning them like leaves in a storm. The girl kicked and fought, coughing for air. The stranger's arm locked around her, holding her tight even as the river tore at his strength. Behind them, the beast reached the riverbank. Its claws slammed into the water, sending waves like storms across the current. But the river was too wide, too deep, too swift. It bellowed in fury, its roar chasing them downstream, but it did not follow. The stranger held the girl against his chest, forcing her head above the water. She gasped, clinging to him as if he were her last breath. Together they tumbled, carried by the raging current into the unknown, suspenseful ending. The river spat them out at last onto a rocky shore, bruised, soaked, and shaking. The girl coughed water, her body weak, but she was alive. The stranger collapsed beside her, His armor, dented, his weapon nearly lost to the current. For a long moment, only the sound of the river filled the night. Behind them, far upstream, the glow of fire marked the village's end. The girl turned her face toward him, her voice a whisper. "You broke my chains, but you also broke the world." The stranger stared at the dark horizon, his jaw set. "Then, we will build a new one." And far away the beast roared again, reminding them that the night was far from over. The river carried them far from the burning village, but the night was not safe. The girl and the stranger lay on the rocky shore, soaked and shaking, while the roar of the beast echoed faintly through the mountains. The girl coughed, her lungs burning from water. Her body was weak, her wrists bruised from chains, yet her eyes were wide and alive. She turned to the man who had saved her again and again. You cannot fight it," she whispered, her voice raw. "The beast is endless, it cannot be killed." The stranger sat upright, water dripping from his armor. His face was pale from exhaustion, but his eyes were sharp with fire. He looked at her, and his words were cold but steady. "Everything can be killed. The question is how." A fragile camp. They moved into the forest, away from the riverbank. The stranger searched for a safe place and found a cave hidden by thick roots. Inside, he lit a small fire with a spark from his strange tool. The girl sat close, shivering. The flames lit her face, showing her fear and her doubt. For her whole life, she had believed her death was necessary, that her sacrifice was the only way to keep the monster beneath the earth. But tonight had destroyed that belief. She finally asked, her voice trembling, "Why? Why did you free me, stranger? You knew the danger." He looked at her, his jaw tightening. "Because no one deserves chains, not you, not anyone." Her lips parted, but no words came. No one in her world had ever spoken such things. The beast hunts far in the distance, the ground still rumbled. The beast had not returned to its prison. It moved through the mountains, searching, sniffing the air. It wanted her. Its hunger was endless, and the broken chains had set it free. The girl hugged her knees. "It will not stop. It will come for me, for us, until we are gone." The stranger leaned forward, his hand resting on his weapon. His voice was like stone. "Then we don't run forever. We fight." Her head snapped up. "Fight? You saw it. It is as big as a mountain. Your weapon burns it, but it does not fall. Even the gods could not stop it." He shook his head. "Gods. Lies. That thing is no god. It is a monster. Monsters bleed. A plan of defiance." He pulled something small from his belt, a round device, broken from his crash. He studied it, his brow heavy with thought. "I don't have enough firepower to destroy it. Not yet. But I can hurt it. Slow it. Break it piece by piece." The girl frowned. "You would stand against it alone?" He glanced at her, and for the first time, a faint smirk touched his lips. "Not alone. You carry more strength than you know." Her heart jumped. She looked down at her hands that had only known chains and stone. Could she truly fight beside him? Could she defy the fate that had always defined her? The stranger leaned closer, his voice low. "We set traps. We make it bleed again. We use fire, water, stone. We fight with the land itself. And when it comes, for you we make it regret ever rising." First test of courage. The next day they prepared. The stranger showed her how to sharpen wooden spears, how to twist rope into snares. He placed strange pieces of his broken ship into the earth, wiring them with his tools. The girl followed, her hands clumsy but determined. For the first time in her life, she was not waiting to die. She was preparing to live. As they worked, she asked softly, "What is your name?" He paused, then answered, "Daniel." The word felt heavy, foreign but real. She repeated it under her breath. "Daniel?" He looked at her. "And you?" She hesitated. For years she had been called nothing but cursed, condemned. At last she whispered, "Arya." Daniel nodded. "Arya. Then let's survive. Together. The monster approaches night. Fell again, and with it came the sound of breaking trees. The beast was near. Its roar rolled across the valley, shaking birds from their nests. The ground split where its claws struck, rivers of fire spilling from the cracks. Arya's body shook, but Daniel's hand pressed firmly on her shoulder. Steady. Fear is natural, but fear can be used. She took a deep breath, gripping the spear she had carved. The firelight caught in her eyes, and for the first time she looked less like a sacrifice and more like a fighter. Clash in the dark. The beast burst into the clearing, its body towering, its molten eyes burning through the trees. It roared, and the forest seemed to bow before it. Daniel shouted, "Now!" Arya cut the rope, and a net of sharpened stakes swung down from the trees, stabbing into the monster's cracked skin. It roared in fury, thrashing. Daniel fired his weapon, blasts of light striking the wounds. Smoke filled the air. The monster staggered, bellowing in pain. For the first time, Arya felt hope, not of escape, but of victory. She raised her spear and charged, driving it deep into one of the glowing cracks. The beast screeched, slamming the ground, but Daniel pulled her back before the claw struck. Suspenseful ending. The trap had worked. The beast was wounded again, bleeding molten fire, onto the earth, but it was far from beaten. Its rage grew, shaking the mountains. Arya gasped, her chest heaving, but her voice was fierce. "We can fight it. We can." Daniel's eyes burned with the same fire. "Yes, but this is only the beginning." The beast rose higher, roaring into the heavens, and the night trembled with the promise of the battle yet to come. The night burned red with fire. The earth shook as the beast rose to its full height, towering above the forest like a living mountain. Its eyes glowed like suns, and its roar split the sky. Daniel stood with his weapon ready, his chest heaving. Beside him, Arya gripped her, spear with trembling hands. They were small against such power, yet they did not run, not anymore. For the first time in her life, Arya stood free, not as a sacrifice, not as a curse, but as a fighter. And at her side was a human who had chosen to defy gods and monsters alike. The beast's fury. The beast charged. Each step cracked the earth, sending shockwaves through the trees. Daniel shouted, "Move!" and pulled Arya aside as a claw smashed into the ground where they had stood. The impact hurled dirt and stone high into the air. Daniel rolled to his feet, firing blasts of light into the monster's chest. Explosions ripped through its stone hide, but the beast only roared louder, slamming its fist into the earth. Arya's ears rang from the sound, but she steadied herself. She thrust her spear into one of the glowing cracks. The beast howled, flames spilling from the wound. "Again!" Daniel shouted. Arya pulled back, then drove the spear in once more. Together, they forced the creature to stagger, but its rage only grew. Traps of fire and stone. Daniel had prepared more than weapons. He had studied the land, and now he used it. "Arya, cut the line," he yelled. She scrambled up a slope where ropes stretched between trees. With a sharp pull, she released the trap. Logs, sharpened to deadly points, swung down and struck the beast's leg. It stumbled, crashing into the ground. The earth shook so violently that Arya fell to her knees. Daniel seized the chance. He charged forward, planting another device at the beast's side. Sparks flew, followed by a deafening blast. The monster screamed as fire ripped open a deeper wound. For the first time, Arya saw fear in its eyes, the cost of defiance. But victory was not easy. The beast lashed out in fury, its claw sweeping across the battlefield. Daniel was thrown hard against the rocks, his armor sparking as he hit the ground. "Daniel!" Arya cried, rushing to him. Blood stained his brow, and his weapon lay broken nearby. The beast loomed above them, its mouth opening wide, flames burning deep in its throat. Arya froze, terror filling her chest. For centuries she had been told she was powerless, cursed. But now, Daniel's words echoed in her mind. No one deserves chains. Fear can be used. Everything can die. Her hands tightened around her spear. She would not kneel. Not tonight. Arya stand with a scream. Arya ran forward. The beast's fire, lit the night as she leapt onto the broken pillar of stone, climbing higher. She dodged falling debris, her body moving with desperate strength. The monster turned its burning gaze on her, its roar shaking the air. But she did not stop. She drove her spear deep into the glowing crack of its neck. The beast shrieked, thrashing, violently. Arya held tight, her arms straining, her body nearly flung into the fire. Below, Daniel forced himself to his feet. His weapon was broken, but his will was not. He shouted, his voice raw, "Hold on, Arya, don't let go." Together against the monster, the beast clawed at its neck, trying to tear her away. Daniel seized a jagged rock, sharp as a blade, and charged. With all his strength, he drove it into the creature's wounded leg. The monster screamed again, stumbling, backward. Arya pulled her spear free and thrust it deeper. Fire gushed from the wound, the smell of burning stone filling the air. For the first time, the beast staggered, its massive body shaking as if it might fall. Arya leapt down, landing hard beside Daniel. He caught her, steadying her weak frame. Their eyes met, and in that single look was trust, courage, and something more. The final blow. The beast, wounded but not defeated, raised its claw for one last strike. Its shadow fell over them, darker than night itself. Daniel pulled Arya close, his voice low but fierce. "This is where fate ends." He pulled one last device from his belt, a small glowing charge. Broken, unstable, but deadly. He pressed it into Arya's hands. Throw it, into the wound. Her heart pounded. She had never thrown anything more than stones in her life. But now she nodded. She lifted her arm, aimed at the glowing crack in the beast's chest, and hurled the charge with every ounce of her strength. Time seemed to stop. The device sailed through the air, straight into the burning wound. A flash, a roar, then an explosion. That split the night. The beast screamed, fire tearing from its body. Its chest collapsed inward, molten cracks spreading across its hide. With a final, earth-shaking bellow, it crashed to the ground, shaking the valley. Suspenseful ending silence followed. Smoke curled into the sky. The great beast lay still, its fire dimming. Arya fell to her knees, her chest heaving. Her hands shook, but her eyes blazed with victory. She looked at Daniel, who stood wounded but alive. We did it," she whispered. Daniel's gaze stayed on the fallen monster. His voice was quiet but firm. "No, it's not dead. Not yet. But it knows now. We will not bow." Arya followed his eyes. The beast's body smoldered, but deep within its cracks, a faint red glow still pulsed like a heartbeat. The battle was not over. Fate had been defied, but destiny had not yet been claimed. The valley lay silent, broken only by the crackle of dying flames. The great beast, once a terror hidden beneath the earth, now lay stretched across the mountainside. Its body smoked, its stone hide shattered, glowing cracks fading slowly into darkness. Arya stood with her chest heaving, her spear still clenched in her trembling hand. Her hair was wild, her skin burned with soot, and her body ached with exhaustion. But she was alive and free. Daniel stood beside her, leaning heavily on his damaged armor. His weapon was gone, his body battered, yet his eyes burned with the same fire that had carried him from the sky. He looked at the beast's fallen form, his jaw set. "It's not dead," he muttered. Arya turned sharply, fear flashing in her eyes. She listened, and he was right. Deep inside the monster's broken chest, a faint glow pulsed like a heartbeat, slow, weak, but still alive. The choice. The villagers had followed from afar, drawn by the thunder of the battle. Now they stood at the edge of the clearing, their faces pale, their eyes wide with terror. They had seen the beast fall. They had seen the girl they once cursed strike it with her own hands. The high priest stumbled forward, dropping his staff. His voice was hoarse, trembling. She fought the beast. She wounded it. She defied fate. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Some bowed to her, others wept in shame. Arya's heart twisted. These were the same people who had thrown stones at her, who had chained her to the pillar. But now they looked at her with something new. Fear, yes, but also awe. Daniel spoke firmly, his voice cutting through the silence. The beast will rise again if nothing is done. Sacrifice is no answer. Chains are no answer. You must choose. Live in fear or fight for freedom. The people listened. For the first time, the lie of their tradition was broken. Arya's awakening Arya stepped forward, standing before her people. Her voice shook, but it carried strength that no one had ever heard from her before. All my life, you called me cursed. You chained me, condemned me, and left me to die. But tonight I broke my chains. I am no curse. I am no sacrifice. I am proof that fate can be broken. The crowd lowered their heads, shame burning their faces. She raised her spear, pointing it toward the beast's smoldering body. This monster does not sleep because of blood. It sleeps because it is forced. And now we will force it again, not with chains, not with fear, but with our will. The villagers gasped. Never had they heard such words. Daniel's lips curved in the faintest of smiles. Arya was no longer the condemned. She was a leader. The final seal. Daniel examined the wounded beast. Its heart is weak. One last strike, and it will fall into sleep again. But this time it will not be bound to sacrifice. It will be bound by choice. Your choice. Arya stepped beside him. Our choice. Together they climbed onto the beast's broken chest. Heat radiated from the cracks, searing their skin, but they pressed on. Daniel placed his hand over the faint glow, then looked at Arya. Strike. Not as a victim, but as a warrior. Her hands shook. For so long she had been told her blood was meant for death. But now, her spirit was meant for life. She lifted, her spear high. With a cry that split the night, she drove it into the beast's heart. The glow burst. Fire shot upward, then collapsed inward, sealing itself shut. The beast let out one last thunderous roar before its body crumbled into stone, still and lifeless at last. The ground shook once more, then fell silent. The beast was gone. A new dawn. The villagers dropped to their knees, stunned into silence. Then slowly they rose, not in fear, but in respect. They bowed, not to the gods, not to the pillar, but to Arya and the stranger who had saved them. Their priest lowered his head. We were blind. We chained our own hope. Forgive us. Arya looked at them, her voice steady. Do not kneel to me. Stand. Live free. Never again shall we give blood to stone. Tears ran down the faces of the people. For the first time in centuries, there was no fear, only hope. The legend begins as dawn broke. The first rays of light spread across the valley. The smoke cleared, and the land looked new, as if the night had washed away centuries of chains. Daniel stood at the edge of the cliff, gazing at the horizon. He had come from the stars, a stranger, but now he had become part of a story far greater than himself. Arya stepped beside him. She looked tired, but her eyes were brighter than the morning sun. What happens now? She asked softly. He turned. To her, his voice calm, resolute. Now you build a future. Not one written in chains, but one you choose. She smiled, a true smile, the first of her life. And you? Daniel looked at the sky, where smoke still marked the trail of his broken ship. I came here by accident, but maybe fate wanted me to be here. Maybe I was meant to break the chains. Arya's hand touched his. Then stay. Help us build. He said nothing for a long time. Then, slowly, he nodded. Closing suspense that night became legend. Songs were sung of the girl once condemned who rose as a warrior, of the stranger from the sky who broke her chains and defied destiny, and of the beast that fell, not to fear but to courage. But far beneath the mountains, deeper than stone, something stirred. A faint crack pulsed with light, hidden in the eye. Dark the battle was won, the future was new, but the story was not over.